Hello, Roka. I'm doing fine. How's it going with you? I just started streaming. That was the first game, I think, and at least I didn't die in first game, so it's good for me so far. Oh, it's night for you? For me here, it's like 4 p.m. In the, I guess, afternoon or pre-evening, something like that. Yeah. My sleep schedule is also kind of messed up, I guess. So I kind of understand. It's not easy once it's messed up. Wow, that's way past midnight. That's almost early morning, or maybe early morning, maybe. Hello, Greg. How are you doing? You have been playing games. I saw you were online, so I just assumed you were playing. Yeah. Uh, Usually, I'm awake until around like 12 12 at midnight, I guess. Sometimes one or two, but not more than that, I think. So yeah, 3:30 in the morning is quite way more late. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I saw you online, so I thought you were playing. But generally, I assumed. I mean, I didn't assume that you were playing Survivor, though. I thought you were trying some new builds with uh, Frank. With the your let's see. I even forgot the name of the killer now. Uh, what is it? The Please forgive me for that. I forgot the name right now. Freddy. Freddy. Okay, I got it. Freddy. Yeah, I assumed you were trying some builds with him. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm awake until. So I don't try to. Okay. Yeah. You're always trying the new builds. That's nice. Okay, that is a survivor build actually. I thought it was a killer one. Okay, nice. Well, at least I think with Slippery Mate, the Kobe works. Yeah, boil over is quite fun. I have never tried boil over with slippery meat, I think, but just boil over is in a survivor point of view, I think it's quite fun, but uh, from the killer perspective, I guess it's quite rough. So it's very tough. Yeah. Yeah. I think the first time I played, I mean, the first game I played after the Chucky was. We got a bot. Is my mic? I mean, is my voice coming through fine right now? Um. Okay. Maybe he has Maybe he has plaything. I don't know, because I cleansed the totem, and I think earlier someone else also cleansed the totem, but it's still Hex faced the. But I think more than Chucky, the girl Chucky, I don't know what's her name. What was her name? I don't remember. She is more popular, I think, right? More than the Chucky. Uh, I cannot remember the girl Chucky's name, but still, yeah, Tiffany. Yeah, I think she's more popular than the. Wow, he's guarding the Jinn or what?
I just wanna play.
I almost got away with that, but didn't work. Yeah, so as I was saying, yeah, Tiffany's so far as I've seen, Tiffany seems to be more popular than Chucky. Yeah. Maybe know it, but I don't think so because he had lots of hex totems earlier. I probably. I think he had Undying, Hex, Face the Darkness, and I don't know what else. Because some kind of perk that would make survivors scream.
Your fucking teeth in. Come out. Wherever you are. Yeah. Why are you running?
I think they picked a very funny yet kind of refreshing, I guess, for.
On the
That was unfortunate.
come on.
If I was a little closer at that time when Nia took the hit, I would have been able to unhook, but I was a little far from her to do the unhook. That's very unfortunate. Yeah, also, I think right, currently, I don't know if it's on my server or what, but I don't see many Chucky players on my server. Like this Chucky might be the Chucky I got after like maybe a week or so, something like that. I think I don't get much Chuckies. The day it was the Chucky was launched, I think 50% of the matches were mostly Chucky, but now it's like almost none. Okay, he only had two hex perks and okay, I don't know what was going on because there was a course or something, I don't know what you call it, that icon on the right, but two of the totems were already. Okay, I don't know what was going on because two of the totems were already cleansed and it's still we were screaming. Luckily, don't know it, or I think he would have made a 4K out of that disaster at the end. I think that would have been bad. I wish killer queues were also fast like this, as it's with the survivor, but it is what it is, I guess. Um, Roka, are you still here? I just wanted to tell you that I was watching a stream this morning, I think. You were playing as Thalita. I don't remember who was the killer. I think it was Trapper. Trapper or no? I don't remember. I think Trapper, yeah. It was the Dead Dog Saloon map. I was watching that map. I think it's in the. It was in my morning, but I don't remember clearly. I didn't get to watch much because I was busy with something else, but I just saw you live, so I just watched for like a few minutes, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I saw it. Do you play as play Thalita as main, or do you Just play with any survivor. I mean, as any survivor. It's nice that all of them kind of. I don't remember these two, but at least he complied with the request for Ada. Or actually, I think it was done before I asked. I think so. Oh, okay. I don't play much as other survivors. I think I only play as Ada, or unless there is some kind of challenge or a daily that I need to complete, then I change survivor. I think I sometimes play as Bill. I think because I like to play as Bill when I started playing this game, but later on, as Ada was added to the game, um, I'm playing as her so far. I also I think I used to play as Zarina also in between them. I think for a little while. I think, but now I just play as Ada most of the times. I have I think I have some event bloodpain offerings also, but which I have never used so far. I'm just I don't know what maybe I'm just collecting it or what, but it's just sitting there in my inventory, I guess. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember now. I remember now. I think you did say last time that you are playing as Ripley. Yeah, I just remembered now. As soon as you said Ripley. Baba might have a little hard time on this map, maybe unless. Someone has a wire tap. That's gonna be very tough for the killer, I think, with a wire tap on top of the building. You can. Oh, okay. I didn't see that message. You only want to play her until you get once you get her to prestige 100. Okay, that's gonna take some time, I guess. Area has no pallets or what? Maybe there was a pallet on that loop, but I think he's lagging or I have a bad ping. I have bad ping as always, but still. Yeah, that was a good one, I guess. It's better than dying instantly, like usual. Good thing that she's working on a gate here. It's very weird with me, to be honest. Like sometimes I'm able to run killers for like so long, and sometimes I'm so bad with them I don't know how to even play. Like I don't know what goes on. I somehow got saved there. I don't know what happened. I think that should have hit me on that pallet, but I don't know what. Uh, that was weird. Yeah, that was very close. If I had a good ping, I would have been saved there, but I don't get good pings usually, so I was assuming I would get down there, but yeah. Yeah, I was quite sure he got me. Usually, I'm very bad with clown, I guess. Clown, trickster, mostly. Because I find it very hard to dodge those blades, I think. And the same thing with the clown. Even if you dodge with the clowns, I guess you can, those, you would get cornered in some way. So it's very tough with the clown too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Unless it's a new clown or so who doesn't know how to use powers nicely. I think in a proper way. If the clown knows how to use those bottles, then I don't think I would get any chance to loop him, even for a single loop, because he would get me right away. So it's very tough for me. I try to. I did get a clown actually. I think on the first match. I think and I did kind of okay. I think, and that I think that's the best I could do with the clowns, because it's very tough. I think I will just take a wait for 5 minutes before playing another game, because I need to collect some. I mean, I have some delivery uh, coming on to me, so I don't want to get up mid game and mess the game, which I normally do. Once I had to leave mid game because I had some delivery at my door, and I just had. I didn't even. I think I went inside the locker and just went outside. And when I came back, my whole team was down, and there was a Meg or Nia. I don't remember who it was. She was very pissed off. Cause and she was literally body blocking me so that the killer would get the hit on me, but somehow um, so okay. You by other day, do you mean like the time when I got found you streaming? And like, I mean, I saw you streaming. Like when I said if it was in the morning, you mean that time? Oh, okay. Yeah. Sometimes it happens. Even if you don't want to, it happens. And I think in that match, I was the only one who got out through hatch, or it was there was another Claudette, I think, either her or me. I don't remember clearly, but one of us got out, I think, through hatch. But yeah, when something like that happens, it messes up the whole game, I think. So it's pretty rough sometimes. So I don't want to do that. So I'll just wait for like 2 or 3 minutes more, maybe. Maybe not the cam on. I don't think I remembering seeing the cam on. I just saw the normal gameplay, I think. And I think Mike was also in the chat, I think. I wanted to drop in to say hi, but I was very much into busy into something else. I just had the screen open, so I couldn't drop in to say hi. But yeah, I I might have watched for like maybe 3-4 minutes maximum. But still, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, the mic was there, and I don't know, I don't remember, of course, but I think two others, two or one other, someone else was there. Yeah. So you guys were chatting, I think. But yeah, as soon as I opened the stream, I think you got downed by the trapper, I believe. I don't remember clearly which killer it was, but it was Dead Dog Saloon for sure. As soon as I opened the stream, you jumped down from the main building and you were down. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'm also oblivious sometimes because you know the killer is around, but you don't see any resistance or anything, and it's so hard to find out the where the killer is, and you get down easily sometimes when that happens. It's something you cannot control, I guess. And especially if it's a Chucky, then I guess it's very rough because if he's in that, I think, what do you call it, slice and dice mode, or yeah, I think something like that. Then you won't even know he's coming, like in the match earlier. So unless you see the killer, it's very tough. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. I'm back. I think I'll play like 4 or 5 survivor matches and then I'll switch to killer. Hopefully, killer matches are better. Thank you. I think while I remember, I'll try to disable the spam filter. Okay, I found a filter that works as a spam protection against repetitions. So maybe this is the one that was creating those warnings. I think maybe, hopefully. Do you think you can type in some message like you did last time, so to check if that repetition works? I mean, that spam triggers or not? I'm not sure what auto mode is, to be honest. If you could, yeah, it works, right? Last time I think the message was deleted. I think so. It should be fine now. Yeah, it worked. So that's good, I guess. Yeah, because everyone loves to type in that way, so that doesn't feel good when you get that spam protection message. So I guess that's cool now. Oh, hello, hello, Astrid. Thank you. Good luck. Good luck ahead in the match. Playing against Huntress, then Huntress is better, I guess. Let's go. Oh, okay. She has, I believe you call it Mind Breaker now. Maybe it depends on what kind of Huntress she is, I think. Says, and I think she is among those who doesn't hit hatchets much, I think, because she didn't even try to wind up there, or she might be very good. I don't know, let's see. This, I think. I mean, even if you miss or throw bad hatchets, you could at least try, I guess. I don't know. Like like so many killers don't even try to play with the hunters. Finally, some hatchets. For I think she's hitting some hatches now, finally. Yeah, I guess. Because she wasn't hitting any hatchets earlier, but now she does. the hunters was so far away from them, from the hook. I think Ace also has the bond. And she might have barbecue and might come right next to us. She might. I think she is not very confident with her hatches. That's only trying to hit the ones that she is confident of hitting for sure. I think I should be the one to be down next because I have 0 hooks and now both of them have like last hook left. And she's lost. Wow. I didn't think that Ace would make it to the door, but at least he did. So 3 man out is quite good, I think. He went with the easy. Okay. Yeah, pretty much every time, I guess. Like in one match, I think as I when I was playing as a killer, the survivor died, but at the end game it was GG easy. I don't know how. Like they died already, and still it was easy for them to die, I guess. I wonder if the GG easy one was Ace. I think I don't know if Astrid was the Ace or maybe not actually. Maybe it was Zarina who died, the one who died, because she gave you a flashbang, which normally people don't. I don't know why by default when by default on in lobby the survivor faces like in this position. I think I don't know why I don't like that position. I just like to flip it to this way somehow, so it looks like it's facing towards me. Like I see it like almost like this on this position. I think I don't know why I don't like it, and I do it. I change the position like almost every time on every lobby. Maybe don't know, some kind of OCD thing, but I like to do that. I had a hunch that they had proved thyself because that gen was going way too fast. Bill wanted to use his plot twist right away. And he DC'd, I don't know why. And he had compound territory and still DC'd, I don't know why. Like he didn't even take that chase that long, I think. And he had like pretty much good enough build, I think. Good, kind of good build, I think. And he had Mori and everything with Blighted Crow. Yeah, maybe he didn't like to be. He didn't like that he couldn't catch up to Nia, I think. Maybe. Yeah. They have a. Yeah. Pretty much everyone has, I guess, these days. Most of the survivor or killer I get here are from Asian countries, and lots of them like are Chinese or from Malaysia or Thailand, like that. So most of them are not readable user nicknames, but I think maybe those are also quite funny. But since you cannot read it, it doesn't make sense, I guess, because you cannot understand anything. But yeah, most of them are pretty interesting or very funny. I have played against a few survivors who have named uh, their nicknames with fruits names on them, I think. And I don't know if you guys have seen them in a chat before. I think someone might have. So yeah, they have like a complete full fruit basket names like that. Like one is mango and one is strawberry and orange, like that. So you get lots of pretty different. You get a lot of funnier, very unique names, I guess. I'm almost out of my yellow flashlight, I think. Maybe I should switch to something else. Wow, she got on gym, I think. I was so slow on that. I could have dropped the pallet. This Meg doesn't like to heal, I think. That Meg doesn't want to heal at all. She just wants to finish the gen. Oh, she had deliverance. That's good, I think. I think she had. Oh no, she doesn't have more. I think. I think we should be able to finish this gen, but let's see. Unless he wants to slug. But I was late. She's not phasing and just acting up to make others to come for it. Save, I think. She might be very pissed off right now. I think. Uh, hello, hello, Mikey. Oh, okay. I thought you. I kind of assumed that something didn't work on your side because of the chase with the Nia, but that's sad, I think. Hopefully, you got better games after that. You even had a quite decent, good build, I think. Although Compound 33 would have kind of smashed us, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was thinking about that match when the match was done. I mean, after the DC, I thought that happened. Yeah, I think a few weeks ago I had some kind of bad connection going on with my internet, and my almost every matches were getting disconnected after like 5 or 10 seconds into the game. So yeah, it's very worse feeling when that happens. Yeah, like for like 3 or 4 days, it was same for me. So I get it. Did it work for you after that, or is it the same? Yeah, the last match the recent match I got was, uh, oh, okay, that's sad, I guess. Maybe it gets better tomorrow, I guess, hopefully, because for me it was for like 3 or 4 days, something like that, I think, and it was very bad. I could play somehow survivor games, but the killer games were pretty much gone, I think, at that during that time. And I think I even got DC timeout of about 24 hours, I think, during that time, because I never DC in a game, no matter in survivor or killer. So far, I have never done it, but because I was disconnected so many times, like consecutively, and I got like 24 hours ban. So yeah, it's sad, I think. Yeah. Like if I had DC'd, that would make sense, but that happened even when I didn't DC, but the my connection dropped, and yeah, that is kind of wild, I guess. Maybe Survivor games work for you too. Yeah. Maybe because even when killer games didn't work for me, somehow Survivor games were a bit laggy, I think, but it worked. Like, wow. When I was banned for 24 hours, I felt really bad already. If it was 48, I don't know what what that would make me feel. But yeah, it happens, I guess. Still, it's not good for me, but at least I'm not getting disconnected every match. It's better than before. Like I get 100 plus ping every time if you see 104 right now. I rarely get sometimes 95, I think. That's the best I could get. Yeah, either they should remove it or somehow not ban you when internet drops. Tended to do, but yeah, mending simulation again. Here we are. We got the same cosmetic and Ada. I hope you, Mikey, you get better matches very soon, hopefully. And he has Surge, I think that's what you call now, because I was used to Jolt. Oh, okay, the lunar event, right? Lunar year. I think that's what it's named. Yeah, it's cool. I think that era is already done with the game. She was already giving up earlier in the first hook. Wow, that should have not hit, but I guess praise the ping. Yeah, events are usually fun, but I wish they had blood point offerings too. But because I think in this event there is no blood point offerings, right? Yeah, there is not. I think yeah. So if there were blood point offerings too, it would be even more great. I think, but still, it's fun. I think. This event's snowman is also kind of fine, I think, but I kind of liked and loved, I think, the older snowman, the normal. It looks weird, but still good, I think. But I love the older one, the normal ones more. I should have stayed in that pallet for a little more longer. think I'll be playing killer games now, but I think I want to spend this blood points a little. I guess my killer kills are never going to get better than this. I think I was a little short on that. I should have aimed a little higher. I should have let that hatchet go a little earlier. I would have made that. I think someone is working here, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that went okay, I think. GG's. Hello, AFK. How are you doing? I think I would have got at least 2K there if I had tried a little harder, but I think 1K is good enough. And we wait for the queue again. So it was faster at least. And it's every day. It's the same queue and the same waiting period. That was very clean shot, I think. Looked very clean. I think he's floating a little. Now we are in the waiting simulator again, I guess. Did she have lucky break or what? I don't see any scratch marks. Or maybe she went right inside the shack again, I guess. I could have hit the gate also, I think, but I missed a little badly there. Yep. It would have been two down. That was so close. Oh, I thought decisive goes away when you unhook someone, but I don't know what's going on. Yep, she does have lucky break or some perk, I think. Maybe not lucky break actually, because that was quite fast, but I don't know what perk is that.
Ah! 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 Ah!
Okay, at least this time the queue is not that long. We got a bot bill, I guess. Greg, if you are here, you might love this too, Bill. I guess. How can you be that bad? I don't know. What is going on with this Bill? Is he trying to give up or something? Okay, he has boil over. Maybe that's why. Like, what is this Bill trying to do? I'm so confused. He's trying to get the value out of Boilobo, I think. So I will let him have some of it, I guess. Both of them died on the same spot. Like, what is this? I don't think I will make this. Yep. And he got the hatch. So this will be the last match for today. I'll be back tomorrow again, but for today this is the last one. That tree blocked every HS I hit there on that gen. I guess the tree doesn't want me to hit it.
Ah!